Hey everybody, what's going on? Greg Sussman here on the FanDuel Hurry Up alongside Davis Maddock of DailyRoto.com to preview this week's Byron Nelson Classic. What's going on here, Davis?
Not much. Excited to talk about the Byron Nelson, a field full of names that only a mother could love. So we're gonna talk about some interesting guys this week.
I don't know how you could call this field weak when you have the strongest man on the planet, Brooks Koepka, in it. He's your top play over on FanDuel when it comes to DFS. Brooks Koepka, he's going to win this thing, right?
His win equity is pretty similar to when Dustin Johnson heads up north to the RBC Canadian Open. It's not quite in that same range, but it's pretty close. Brooks is the only golfer in the top 15 of the official world golf rankings in the field this week. This course is 7,300 yards, and there's really no trouble you can get in off the tee. No trees, no water, no rough. This is a very open American link style golf course, something that Brooks is actually familiar with from playing in Europe. He is, even as the most expensive golfer in the field, he is the best possible play. And I really think that he's a building block of FanDuel rosters this week.
Yeah, I don't think you have any choice but to go with Koepka, who is clearly the best player in this tournament. And you want to root for Brooks. He's too pretty not to. All right, your second stud, because of the weak field, it's an interesting name, man. It's Scott Piercy, who normally is in our mid-tier. How come you consider him a stud for this week?
Well, he's definitely in the mid tier normally. Normally he'd be down at 8,000, 7,800 on FanDuel. We got him up at 9,600 this week. And at first glance, you're probably going, that can't be right. Scott Piercy is not a stud. But really, when you get past Brooks, Hideki, Stenson, I guess even Jordan Spieth, Mark Leishman. You're looking at a lot of guys who project really similarly, and the data golf odds on dailyroto.com have a favorable projection for Piercy this week. He definitely is going to be much better in an event that's really about running hot with the putter, which is what this event is. The greens are actually the largest greens that we'll see on the PGA Tour this year, almost 1,300 yards combined when you add all 18 of them together. So really, for Piercy, it's all just going to be about hitting the greens and then trying to make 12 footers. And with slow greens and big greens, I do like him at this price this week.
Piercy at this price makes him one of the favorites according to Davis Maddock. So you got to get him in there and build your lineups around him and Brooksy. Let's move on to the middle tier here. Guys that solid value, but not exactly the highest priced or lowest priced guys. We get to Adam Schenk, who fits in our mid tier here this week. What do you like about Adam Schenk?
Well, we got to love Adam Schenk. We tout him every time on this show at 125 to 1, 150 to 1. We get him at a good price here on FanDuel. Schenk is one of the top 30 guys on tour in strokes gained putting. And normally when I come on the Hurry Up, I don't talk about putting. But this actually is an event where I think there is some correlation to putting skill, not necessarily putting luck, because guys are going to have so many putts. A lot of these par fours, it's going to be 280-yard drive, 170-yard iron shot, and a 30-foot putt, because these greens, you're not going to be playing from the fringe, you're not going to be playing from the rough. And Schenk has really demonstrated that he has that skill on tour this year, and he really is my favorite mid-tier value overall.
All right, one of the top values in this mid-tier, it's Davis's boy Adam Schenk, and I have a feeling, Davis, probably not the last time we're going to talk about him tonight. Moving on, then continuing on the mid-tier, we get to Denny McCarthy. Is it really Denny, like Jenny McCarthy, or did you just shorten it to make sure that we were making the comparison?
It's really Denny McCarthy, and he is really the most grinder tour pro ever. Does not hit it very far off the tee, is not super great with the iron in his hands, but he is second on tour in strokes gained putting in 2019. So you get the putter in Denny McCarthy's hand, and he's going to start rolling them in. And that's really what we're hoping for this week, because as I mentioned, this is not a tough golf course for them to play. The winning score last year was -23, and really the only defense that this course has against these amazingly talented golfers is the weather. And right now it projects like it's going to be wet, but not necessarily super windy. So you get a long, easy golf course and you make it wet. That means these guys are going to be sticking putts within 8 feet on a lot of these par fours. And I do have confidence that McCarthy can make 8-footers at a higher than average clip.
Denny McCarthy makes our cut this week. You look at that field, you'll understand why. And you heard the analysis from Davis there. Denny McCarthy, why not? All right, your value plays of the week. The lower price guys you want to consider. And we begin with the almighty Nate Lashley. We've talked about Nate before. How come we're going with him this week?
So Lashley coming off making the cut last week at Quail Hollow, much more difficult course, much more difficult event, much more difficult field. He travels this week to come play at the Trinity Forest Golf Club. He's going to find some easier competition. He's priced really low on FanDuel. Not really anything great about Nate Lashley's game. He's just sort of an all-around decent golfer, and the data golf strokes gained metrics do power him as one of the best values on FanDuel that we have on Daily Roto. And I actually kind of like Lashley's game. He seems to have good control out, off the tee box, good control with his irons, and right about tour average in strokes gained putting.
The almighty Nate Lashley made the cut last week on that harder course. So this week could be another opportunity for him to pick up some strokes and make another cut here this weekend. One more DFS player to get to for this week, and that's Brandon Hagge, another value play here. How can you like Hagge?
So unlike Nate Lashley and Adam Schenk and Denny McCarthy, Brandon Hagge does not have a great all-around game. The guy's kind of clueless with a wedge in his hands, but he absolutely punishes it off of the tee. He hits it. If he hit a 350-yard drive this week with a good bounce, I really would not be surprised. So when looking at this golf course, you see all these wide open holes. You see, some par fours that are, you can get there on 410 yards. And I think Hagge, the driving distance alone and how easy this course is going to play makes it possible for him to go really compete in a birdie fest.
A birdie fest? Well, hopefully he can hang in there and, survive long enough to get you a whole bunch of points over on FanDuel. All right, we'll take a break here. Davis will stick with me as we go over his favorite bets of the week. I'm quite sure I know one of them. We'll find out the others when we return. Back with you here on the FanDuel Hurry Up, Greg Sussman, Davis Maddock of DailyRoto.com. And one of your boys each and every week is Adam Schenk. No surprise, at 150 to 1, we're going back to him.
Look, if I keep getting these numbers on the FanDuel Sportsbook for Adam Schenk, I'm going to keep betting them. We get him at 150 to 1, and this field is really pretty brutal. When you get past Mark Leishman, who I think is the 6th highest priced golfer in terms of the betting markets this week, it really falls off a cliff. We have Rory Sabatini at 40 to 1 here, and I think Adam Schenk might be a bet all the way up until like 80 to 1, especially considering how heavy putting is going to play this week. I just think there's so much variance, and I've seen Schenk run hot with the putter before. I think at 150 to 1, you're getting quite a bit of expected value with that.
The value is there for Adam Schenk, so he'd go all the way up, Davis said, to 80 to 1. You're getting him at 150 to 1. Make sure you make the bet on Adam Schenk. Now, one thing I was surprised, Davis, to not hear from you when it was the DFS portion of the show was one of your guys, Rafa Cabrera-Bello. How come he didn't make the cut?
RCB is what I think. I think he is a pretty good FanDuel play, but I'm not in love with that range in general this week in DFS, and I actually think some of them make better bets. Like RCB really is going to have to make a lot of birdies to pay off his FanDuel tag, whereas I think you're getting better odds getting him at 50 to 1 in the betting markets because he does have some class, more wins on the European Tour than a lot of the guys close to him in the betting markets range. But I don't necessarily think of him as like a FanDuel scorer. I don't think of him as getting a ton of birdies. He's going to avoid a lot of bogeys. He's not going to get into a ton of trouble. And if he does win at 50 to 1, it's going to be more of a slow and steady wins the race type of performance.
Slow and steady does win the race. Rafa Cabrera-Bello, one of the more solid players in this week's field. Maybe the price isn't right in DFS, but it is on the FanDuel Sportsbook, so consider putting RCB in your lineup. All right, up next, we move on and we get to Roger Sloan, who has the greatest odds of anyone you're picking out this week. 500 to 1 for Roger Sloan. Why?
We just had to get a bomb every week when I come on. I gotta have one guy who gives us a sweat. We had Justin Harding as the first round leader at the Masters.
That was awesome.
We had him at 200 to 1. So every week when I come on, I try and get one guy as a total bomb who I think his name can show up on the leaderboard at some point. And Sloan is a guy who's played in Texas a ton. I am actually sort of leaning on guys who went to the University of Texas, played college golf in Texas, because I do think there is a little bit of value in terms terms of the betting markets this week in that narrative. So Sloan has played a ton of golf here despite being Canadian. And, he just sort of has a solid all around game. He's decent tee to green. He's decent approaching the green. He's decent around the green, decent strokes gained putting. And the daily Roto data golf projections do have him at plus EV at 400 to 1 even. So at 500 to 1 at the FanDuel Sportsbook, we got to put a little something on that.
Decent. That's all I heard for Roger Sloan. He's decent. I want to sweat a little bit. The Justin Harding thing was amazing. And if we could feel the same way the Byron Nelson in regards to Roger Sloan, well worth it, man. Totally well worth it. Up next here on the Hurry Up, we move on to Abraham Answer. We've talked about him before. He's 80 to 1 this week. Answers, you described in the past, very solid all-around player. How come you like him this week at the Byron Nelson?
So this one is actually one where I feel very confident in this. This is like maybe even a multi-unit bet for me at 80 to 1, because I do think that Brooks Koepka captures a decent percentage of the win equity of this field. But after him, I'm not feeling great about Hideki. I'm not feeling great about Stenson, Leishman. And I think that this field is pretty open to a winner coming from 50 to 1 to 125 to 1. And Answer is the guy who I'm really hitching my wagon to. He's one of the best 15 guys in tour in terms of driving distance, gains a ton of strokes, tee to green, is not great with the wedge in his hands. But, our research at Daily Roto basically showed it's not a huge deal this week if you're not great with the wedges. It's really going to be about your iron play and about your off the tee play. And I'm super confident and Answer with both of those things. And I think he could book a PGA Tour win here.
This could be the spot for Answer, and you're getting very good odds on him here at 80 to 1. Consider putting him into your lineup because with this field, it's well worth it. Continuing on, we move on to Dylan Fratelli, who is 100 to 1. I know a lot more about Shank than I do Fratelli. What do I need to know for this weekend?
Well, we have more Texas narrative. So Dylan Fratelli is a South African, and those guys growing up do play a lot of courses similar to this, these link-style courses. But Fratelli actually went to the University of Texas at Austin, has played a ton of Texas golf. Again, a lot like Answer, does gain strokes off of the tee, does gain strokes on approach, but is not so hot around the greens. I actually would consider Fratelli, though, maybe even above average putter. So I think if you're filling your card out with like these mid-range values and ignoring Brooks, Hideki, Stenson at the top, Answer and Fratelli would be the two guys I would make sure to include on my card.
Answer and Fratelli belong on your card according to Davis Maddox, so make sure you put them in there. It's well worth the price of admission here. Put a few units down, not just a unit, a few. One last player to get to, and that's Ryan Moore at 50 to 1. This isn't a surprise play by any means, but why Moore over some of the other players out there?
So I am sort of fading the top of the market. I just don't see a ton of value in betting Hideki at 16 to 1 or Brooks at 6 to 1. But I want some quality pedigree golfers on my card. So Ryan Moore, 35th on tour, strokes gained tee to green. When you remove all the elite golfers who are already at Bethpage Black getting ready, he's closer to like 8th in the field in strokes gained tee to green. And getting 50 to 1 on a guy who gains that many strokes, before he gets to the putting surface, I think is pretty good. And I'm really just trying to embrace the variance with putting this week, either by taking guys who I think can beat the field or taking guys who just need putting to run their way to in a birdie fest. And I think more in a tournament where the winning score is like minus 22, I do think he sort of has the game to hang with, these random tour stragglers who could be at the top of the leaderboard.
Rather than go with some of the other stragglers, the long shots, Ryan Moore at 50 to 1, a solid player you can always feel good about. So consider putting Ryan Moore on your card this week. That's going to do it for us here on the FanDuel Hurry Up. I want to thank Davis Maddox for joining me. Davis, good luck this weekend, both DFS and on your card.
Hey, thanks, man. I'll be very excited for all of this to blow up when Brooks wins by 4 strokes.
Me too. And that's why we're putting him in DFS. So it's a little bit of hedging right there. Anyway, for Davis Maddox, I'm Greg Sussman. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great week. And we'll see you back here tomorrow.